You are listening to the Mountainside podcast, and our guest for this episode is Ben Strahan. He spent 20 plus years as a hotshot wildland firefighter, fighting some of the country's biggest forest fires right from the fire line. Ben is currently the superintendent of a wildland firefighting crew. When it's not the fire season, Ben has devoted much of his time to helping other first responders with mental health and overall wellness. He's also a leadership consultant, but above all that, Ben is just an incredible human. We recorded 2+ hours virtually, and I enjoyed every minute of our conversation. This was an incredible episode, and thanks for listening. Ben, this is awesome, man. We've been going back and forth for, God, I don't even know, like at least 6 to 9 months or something, trying to get you on, get you scheduled to come to Colorado. We couldn't make it happen with our schedules. You're a busy man. You're a family man. I am too. And we live in different states. You're in Northern California, correct?
Yeah.
So anyways, I'm glad that we're doing this. We're doing it not the exact way that I want to do it, but this is good enough for me, man. So I try not to do these virtual ones, but only with heavy hitters and real badasses that I want to talk to and we can't connect in person. So we tried, and in the future, hopefully we can do one in person too. So
yeah, I think that's going to happen. I don't think it's a hopefully. I think it's going to happen.
It will, dude. Just the planets have got to align a little bit, right?
That's what's up. Yeah.
Well, the main reason I wanted to have you on the Mountainside is most everybody that we have on the Mountainside is from a mountain community, has a heavily outdoor influence, but also individuals that are doing extraordinary things. And I think wildland firefighters are some of the most extraordinary, quiet professionals that I know firsthand, from the few that I know personally. And I'm very grateful for anybody that serves in that service. Living in Colorado and the mountain towns where I grew up and lived, I've been evacuated a couple times. And to see you guys come in there and put out a fire is super badass. Just from the equipment that runs in, the hotshot trucks, the engines, the aircraft, smoke jumpers, all that sort of stuff. So as much as I can shed a light on that and, help some nonprofits that to help support those guys, and women and all walks of life that put their lives on the line to go out and try to mitigate some of this fire risk, 1, and 2, save some homes, save some lives. It's super important to me here. So it's an honor to have you on because you're a hotshot. You've been in the media quite a bit, and you do a lot outside of firefighting to help firefighters in general, wildland firefighters specifically. So I guess I don't even know where to start, dude. I got so many things I want to talk to you about. But I guess, could we kind of start with your background? I don't know much about you. I mean, there was a Vice reel that I watched that's like maybe 10 minutes long, really well put together piece. And it covered a lot, but I want to do a deep dive, dude. I want to spend some time with you tonight. So I guess if we could kind of start where you grew up and how you grew up.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, the intent of your podcast lines up with a lot of the stuff that I do for sure. I grew up, the first 8 years of my life were spent in Orange County, where my parents lived and met and then raised me for the first 8 years. And my 3 siblings, I have a younger sister and 2 younger brothers. Right around that 8-year mark, my dad, he's an Arkansas boy, and that's where he primarily grew up, and then transplanted to Southern California when he was I think out of high school or something like that. So he just kind of got over the hubbub and the fast moving pace of Southern California and wanted to find a more remote and more calmer place to raise his kids. So he moved us up to a town, my folks did, a town called Garden Valley, which is in Northern California, about roughly an hour east of Sacramento and roughly like an hour west of South Lake Tahoe, kind of right in the foothills of California. Super small community, very very remote, like not a big population. Like my graduating class in high school is under 60 people or something like that. So
Yeah, that's
yeah, so
insane.
pretty small community, very tight knit, and it consists of a few different places. There's a pretty world renowned river rafting community in Coloma that's near us. So the summer times can get touristy a little bit, but not. We're kind of up above that. So it's just a remote. It's a great place to raise a family. You can be in the woods every day. The logging community was huge. The wildland firefighting was huge. Was huge. A lot of construction worker type folks. People that, a lot of access to public lands, and just really, really, really fun stuff. Like we're pretty close to the entrance of the Rubicon Jeep Trail, for reference. So, yeah. So my parents moved us up here, and it was a really kind of an awesome childhood. Went to a small high school, and kind of what got me into the fire world. Just for people who are listening, like what my job title is right now is the superintendent of what is called a hotshot crew for a land management, a government land management agency. And we can get more into that specifics of that, but how I found that as a career was, I knew what I didn't want to do was I didn't want to go to college. I wanted and I didn't want to like spend a bunch of money trying to go to school to get some sort of education on something I didn't know what I wanted to be. And I wanted to be outside. That was the primary thing. I wanted to work with my hands. My grandfather and I had a small business growing up called Ben and Ted's Grand Works, and we would run around
Nice.
doing small odd jobs of building horse fences and repairing septic tanks or building a deck or retaining all these just like kind of fun little odd jobs here and there. And that kept me busy and taught me a lot of really strong work ethic growing up as a kid. And I was outside almost every day. So, it's when you grow up in these places and you're connected to nature, um, you kind of, it becomes a very like intricate and crucial part of your life. At least it did for me. And so out of high school, I was asking myself that, I didn't feel like I had any other skills outside of like using my muscles and my body to like be like a laborer type of person. So the choices that I thought were available to me at the time was, I could go into logging, I could do construction, or I could become a wildland firefighter or a firefighter. And thankfully for me, there was my school had an ROP program, which is like a program that teaches kids how to basically they give them skills or certifications or whatever to enter the workforce like straight out of high school. And so they had a fire program, and I got my basic certifications, and 2 days after graduating high school I'm working for the Forest Service fighting fire. So and that it's been history, and that was
That's incredible.
2001.
So
And
I'm sorry, I want
yeah,
to slow you
yeah,
down there a little
yeah,
bit. And I
and
love your connection, your backstory, because it sounds very similar to mine. Like I grew up in a small mountain town. I was like, I felt like I was going to be stuck there my entire life. I chose a very same path, but the connection to nature is what's brought me back there and where I want my kids to grow up, So like I get everything you're
100%,
saying
man.
100%, but I don't know that my high school had a program like that where you could do some entry level career type stuff. I mean, I think it was like a bus ride to Denver or something like that. So your high school
Yeah,
had a wildland firefighter program or something that
program.
wow.
Yeah, it's like and I cannot remember what. Yeah, I've done a few of these podcasts before, and I'm always mentioned ROP program, and I can never remember what the damn acronym is. But either way, um, one of these days I'm gonna have to try and figure that one out. But yeah, there was three different classes that you would take like during the school year, and I took all the fire classes. So it was like the equivalency of like taking a welding class or like a construction class at the high school or whatever, right? And so they kind of gave you like these base level skills to enter potentially that workforce when you left the high school. And the same thing here. We did like a structure side where we learned how to throw a ladder or put on some turnouts and kind of learn like the basic knowledge of how fire works and like when it's burning down a house and these types of things. Or we did like a medical side where we learned like first aid and CPR and sort of broke it down a little further. And then there was a wildland side, which was like, and honestly, I mean, if I'm being honest, I really didn't want to be a wildland firefighter.
Oh,
I
really?
think when we're not really, I mean, when you're a kid and you're like, I want to be a firefighter, I think most of us, for sure. Well, I shouldn't say it that way. For me, like when you think of a firefighter, I would assume that a lot of people think red trucks, city departments, saving kittens out of trees and things, and doing all these types of silly things.
Right.
Um, I really didn't know much about the Forest Service, which the difference is the way why I say red truck is because we drive green trucks, so it's a totally different thing that's not even in your perspective when you're kind of like going through that stuff trying to think about what you want to do. It really wasn't until 2003, after or during the Cedar Fire, which at the time was the largest fire in California history, where I really was like, this is what I want to do for my life. It was like this super challenging fire. It was Santa Ana winds. There was multiple fires in the southern part of California, and this fire was just smoking homes like crazy. And I remember seeing immigrants run out of bushes and things while the fire's advancing with like no clothes and like partially burned and stuff. Like it was really gnarly, man. It was really kind of this really crazy fire. And shoot, I'm 21 years old or something like this at the time.
And
So I'm
this was
still
the
pretty wet
first
behind
fire?
the
Like,
ears.
this is your entry
No, no,
to
no.
wildland?
2000. So 2001 is when I started, and so there's a bunch of different things within the Forest Service, like different modules. There's engines, there's helicopter modules, there's something that people know about called smoke jumpers, like they jump out of planes and parachute into fires. Um, there's hand crews and then different typings of hand crews. So you have a type 2 hand crew, you have a type 2 IA. The IA stands for initial attack. So they kind of like they work around like the initial stages of fire, trying to catch them really small. And then you have what I do now, which is called hot shots. So they're type 1 hand crews. And so hot shots, smoke jumpers, and helicopter repellers are kind of like your three, I don't really care for the term, but like your special operations or your elite teams within the agency. Highly specified, highly trained, lots of physical fitness, like the requirements and training needed to do those are at a much higher level. So those are kind of the three, and typically you're going to hear a lot about smoke jumpers and hot shots being like the primary kind of elite teams. The only difference is one jumps out of a plane and fights fire typically on a smaller scale. The smoke jumpers, that is, and they try and catch things really small in really remote areas where vehicles can't get to them. And then hot shots is like a 20 to 25 person team that also do very remote things, but we are built for large scale campaign fires, those fires that burn all summer, and we come in and we attack the areas of the fire that people can't get into, self-sustaining, take over very large areas of fires with all the bodies that we have. And it's like for me it's just the dopest thing you could do within the agency. And that what I was getting to is like that Cedar Fire is like in 2003. So I had 2 seasons under my belt, and then the Cedar Fire hits in 2003, and it was just this insane, chaotic fire. I hadn't seen anything like that. Like coming through the ranks, a big fire back then was 20,000 acres, which still seems huge, but that was a crazy large fire, and this fire was like 100,000 acres, and I was like, it was insane. So, and it's moving fast and brush and windy. The Santa Ana winds is like for the people that have been to Southern California, it's these winds that come out of the desert, and you can get some really really high winds that blow all through the night, super dry, and fire just races straight to the ocean. So this is what we were having, and we were in this area, this really cool, this like trying to protect these homes in this like what we were calling like a donut. It was like a cul-de-sac area, this field in the middle with all this community subdevelopment kind of around, and the fires pushing downhill, which typically doesn't happen, but you have wind on it, so it's pushing straight downhill, right? Heat goes up, so fire typically goes uphill. it's pushing downhill, and we're doing what's called a back burn to save these homes. And in that time period, the incident commander, deputy incident commander, comes up to me and goes, "Hey Ben, like," well, he didn't know my name actually, but he's like, "I'm just some like snot nosed kid actually," and he comes up to me and he's like, "Hey man, like you guys are the ones putting out this fire. I just want to say thank you." Jumps in his truck and drives off, and I was like,
Okay.
"Yeah," "What the fuck? Who is that?" He's like, "I'm the deputy IC or whatever," and runs off. I was like, "Whoa, that was really weird," and I just like instantly had this like sense of pride. I was like, what the fuck, man? Like, because before that, you're driving by these towns and these cities and these like multi-million dollar home development areas, and it's the red trucks that I talked about earlier. And this is not a diss on these guys. It's just my perspective and observation when I'm 21 years old. They're like parked in these towns where the fires just may or may not get to, like way far away from the fire. And we're like rolling by these guys. And as a 21-year-old kid, like I had a ton of ego. I'm like, and these guys are like being fed and they're in the newspaper every day. And like,
Right.
I think Arnold Schwarzenegger was our governor at the time, and he like showed up to the incident command base and like was shaking everybody, all these dudes' hands and stuff, like while we were out there, like literally putting in the work, not sleeping,
Yeah.
sleeping in the dirt, like really getting after it. And that was the moment where I was like, man, this is what I want to do. Like, and once that switch clicked in my head, I was like, okay, how far can I take this? How far can I take this? What's the most elite thing that I can do within this? And at the time for me, it was becoming a smoke jumper. So 2003, 4, 5, like I'm training my ass off. I'm on an engine, which is it's a much needed resource and it's awesome, but um, it's just not the most elite thing you could possibly do. There are totally elite people in those modules, so I don't want people to hear this and think that I don't like engines. They're great. We need them. But I wanted to be a smoke jumper, so I worked really hard to do that, and some things fell through in 2006. I met a girl who eventually became my wife.
It's funny how that works.
That'll happen, right? And in a lot of ways, I mean, a lot, in every sense of the way, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, honestly. I have two beautiful children because of her, and in a lovely marriage. So, but in 2006, my smoke jumping dream at the moment didn't really pan out, so I got on a hot shot crew instead, on the Tahoe National Forest, and man, I was there for 11ish years or so, and really the rest is history. I started in 2016. I I transitioned off of that crew after working my way up the ranks and got a captain's position on a crew on the El Dorado National Forest, and worked under a really great leader, Aaron Humphrey. Shout out to Aaron Humphrey. And then in 2020, in the midst of COVID and all the bullshit happening there, I got the superintendent's job, and that was my career goal. That I set for myself in 2006. I remember very vividly. We're on a fire in Alaska, and I'm sitting on the bank of this river, and it's just after just a grinder of a shift. We haven't showered for 12 days, and we're eating out of like boxes and cooking our meals every day in camp, and it's beautiful. There's not a human body except for our crew in like 100-mile radius,
Wow.
and it's just so remote and so freeing, honestly. And sitting on the bank of this river and just sort of taking it in. And my first year as a hot shot, and I was like, man, this is just so epic. And I look over and I see my superintendent at the time on that crew, and he's cooking food for the crew and having fun. And they're talking shit and they're just like having a blast, And I'm like, fuck, man, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to be a superintendent someday. And then I found myself getting that job in 2020, and yeah, and so here I am. I'm a superintendent of one of the most elite hotshot crews in the nation, and I couldn't be more grateful for that. So
That's incredible, man. Congratulations. And I'm
thank you.
sure that there's a lot of stuff that happens in between all that too. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
I think for people that are listening to this, because I think a lot of people don't understand what you guys go through unless you've actually talked to somebody, because it's not in the media a whole lot. You don't have film crews in there like on the fire line with you a lot of the times because it's fucking super dangerous. You guys are the quiet professionals. So I guess diving into a little bit more of like what does a hot shot job entail? I mean, it's
Sure.
it's kind of self-explanatory, but like, even those little things like the camaraderie and stuff, like I come from a rock and roll roadie background, and there's some camaraderie that happens through some like suffering and just some bad fucking moments, right? Like nobody likes loading 40 semi trucks at fucking 2 a.m. in the morning in Germany in the middle of winter, right? Like that sucks. So like those suck moments where you can actually, look to the guys to the left and the right of you, and it doesn't matter what color their skin is, as long as they have a good attitude or in the trenches with you and are helping you and can actually, and honestly, the attitude goes a lot further than even how good you are at your job. Sometimes it's like, how much can you be my buddy or make me laugh at this moment where we're just fucking hating it, right? So I don't want to pass over that, but yeah, I guess for people that aren't listening to this, like, how much do you travel? I mean, are you primarily staying in California because you're El Dorado National Forest, or when that fire pops up in Alaska or Colorado or Montana, for example, in some of these western states that have big burns and huge fire danger? I mean, are you guys going to those fires as well?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, all great questions. Yeah, so the hotshot crew, like I said, 20 to 25 people with a hierarchy of different positions, right? So superintendents at the top, two captains, and we have something called squad leaders, lead firefighters, senior firefighters, and so on and so forth, making up people. For the longest time, our job was primarily like the overhead stuff. So squad bosses and up would be permanent employees working year round, and the rest would all be temporary positions. That's kind of going by the wayside. And now we're hiring almost full 25 people permanent year round because our fire seasons are year round now. So that's one aspect. And so that kind of leads into the question of, do we just stay in California? No. Hotshot crews are a national resource, so we can fight fire literally anywhere in the United States year round. So like I mentioned before, we've been in Alaska, we've gone to New Mexico last year, and Arizona, Colorado's a hot spot, right? We're always over there. Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, the West for sure. Then you have like the off season in the West, when it's raining in the wintertime, and you might find yourself out in Florida or the Carolinas or some of these places, right? So we're literally all over the place year round, it leads to some challenges for sure, right? Like, so it's like just the ability to manage stress and fatigue, and some of these things become difficult. And for one of the reasons being that we are an overtime based business. Like, we don't get paid, we work for the federal government. We don't get paid. We're not rich. You know what I mean? So, and because of that, we have to make a ton of overtime to sort of make ends meet in a lot of ways. So what our season looks like between roughly May and November, we're trying to lock down 1,000 hours of overtime. And so our tours look like, if we get a call, I get an order to go to take an assignment in Colorado. We travel to Colorado. That might take us 2 days. And once we get assigned to a fire out there, we're there for 2 weeks. And then we may have another 2 to 3 day drive back. So anything outside of California, you're looking at, pushing close to a month gone on some of these assignments, 20 days or so. And so that's and then we rinse and repeat. So it's 14 days out, excluding travel, and then 3 days off, and then 14 out, and 3 days off, and then 14 out, 3 days. And we rinse and repeat that all the way until the fire season stops, which
Right.
it don't stop no more. So
No, it's
it's
wild.
yeah. So the rest and the fatigue can be real, and so yeah. So the 1,000 hours is a benchmark, and we don't get paid while we're sleeping in the dirt. So we don't stay in hotels when we're on fires like other resources do. We sleep right in the dirt, right in camp, or right on the edge of the fire, or spiked out. While these things are going on. So we don't see showers for 2 weeks to a month sometimes. and we're eating the best we can and getting as much rest as we possibly can. And last year was a lull, so we had it was a slower season, so there was a lot of not craziness that we've been seeing in the news as of most recent years, where you're seeing these campaign fires. Like we had a 1 million acre fire in California in 2020 when I got the soup job. So it's
That's
that shit's
insane.
unheard of. It's super insane. So yeah, so it's and like you were saying, silent warrior type. Like we have pride in what we do. We have, for a long time. And that's the way I was raised, to kind of, you know, walk tall and or walk small but carry a big stick type of situation. And really not, don't need to be talking about what you do, and just know that what you're doing is there for service for the communities. And that's really great. I think there's a lot to that, right? It's what that means to me is like, don't have a big fucking ego. Like you don't need to be walking around telling everybody you're a hot shot, right? So, and but the issue is when you're looking for reform, and you're trying to get a better paycheck, or technically we're not even classified as firefighters, not yet anyways, and we're forestry technicians, and there was a whole issue with that in and of itself, trying to get taken care of, because part of the problem is we work our butts off, we're gone 6+ months out of the year, and competing agencies pay a lot more money, specifically in California with the state
Yeah, like
and
Cal Fire and
our
all those guys. It's insane, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty
Man,
bad. So like recruiting and retention has been a challenge. So
I'm sure.
yeah,
And you brought something up a minute ago that I kind of want to touch on. Like, I think it's okay to have an
totally.
ego, man. Like, I I'm kind of on the fence right now with this whole toxic masculinity type movement that's going on, where it's like, I think it's okay to be masculine, dude. I think it's okay to be fit. I think it's okay to show that off. I think it's okay to have a little bit of an attitude, because I would imagine that without some sort of cockiness, you can't do your job right.
Mhm.
I think that there is the point to be professional for sure, but I think in any sort of career, whether you're working at Apple or whatever, and you want to be top and you want to be excelling, you don't need to be an asshole, but you can still be masculine and still, you know, have a little bit of, I don't know if you call it swagger or whatever the kids terms are that they're using today. But like, I personally think it's okay to be a little bit cocky. And I think
Yeah,
it takes a little bit of that to excel in something, especially something physical.
sure. Yeah, I mean, the way I see it, man, like the ego you're not getting rid of it. Everybody's got a
Mm-hmm.
fucking ego, dude. In my personal opinion, man, we can get real philosophical if you want. If you really want to hear my definition of an ego.
Sure.
Um, okay, so like I everybody, the way I see it is everybody is born with a certain amount of stories based on Joe Rogan talks about, like, we don't all start on the same start line, like and that's just true, right? Some of us have more, I don't know if privilege is the right word, but we have more things that are available to us, you know what I mean? And this could be for various reasons. It doesn't need to be. We don't need to get into like race and gender and all this stuff. We can
Dude,
just
it could even
understand
be
at a high
genetics at that point,
or
right? Like,
genetics.
yeah,
Yeah, at 100%. We can just think at a higher level, like a more observatory level, that people just have different access points, and sometimes those access points come with, or lack thereof, come with a story as to why or why not they don't exist. And you're just born into that environment. So I like to think about it like this. I typically ask people to close their eyes. You don't have to close your eyes, but just to, like, if you are listening to this, just close your eyes and imagine like a figurine with no face, no nothing. This little cartoonish character gets dropped into this square box, and it's just like a foundation of bricks. So imagine bricks one level high, and you're standing in the middle of it, and it's, the walls are arm's distance away from you. It's like a little brick foundation. Depending on who you are and what was available to you, like that foundation could be 2 bricks high or 3 bricks high, rows high, or maybe just a few bricks on the ground. Maybe it's not a complete foundation or whatever it is, right? And each one of these bricks represent a specific story. And sometimes a story could be generational, like this is passed down from grandparents to your parents, now it's yours. Okay, right? Whatever that might be. And you can think about the different stories that happen, but typically these stories are generational or whatever. Over the course of time, because of these bricks that are sitting there, you're now going to form your own stories. So you're going to slowly start building this brick house. Keep building it, keep building it. And oftentimes what happens is these bricks get taller than you put a roof over it, and there's no door. And nobody can see the little self, the little thing, the vulnerable thing with no clothes on or nothing, just cartoon character in the middle. They don't see that person anymore. And then you're living in a dark room and it never gets to be expressed. But what people do see is all of your stories. And those walls represent your ego, because the ego is trying to protect that soft little supple creature inside. So for me, it's about understanding these different stories that exist, right? By just like contemplating where they came from, what they are, do they hold value to me, do they actually make sense anymore? And you start removing some of these bricks and you build a window, or maybe you build a door, you maybe build a few windows, you build a skylight and let some light in there so people can actually see the vulnerable self that's existing inside. But that ego house is never going away. It's always going to exist. It's just building, making a more, it's like understanding it better is how
Sure.
I see it.
That's a
And
great
letting the ego
analogy, man.
serve. Yeah.
It's
So that's
really puts it in
that.
perspective. That's a great outlook. Like, how did you come up
Yeah.
with that? Damn,
uh,
I don't know what it's like to think that deep. That's incredible, man.
well, we'll get into more of that, I'm sure,
Yeah,
because
I definitely want to
yeah,
talk to you
I
about some of what you're doing with some of these other people,
yeah,
and
absolutely,
shout out to Brandon
totally.
too from Anchor Point. You know,
Oh,
like he's such a great human, man. But he's the one that actually
fucking
connected
A.
us, and he's kind of
Yeah.
told me what you're doing. But we're gonna dive into that in a minute. But yeah,
Okay.
what a great outlook, man, and what a great way to explain. You know, I've never really thought about it that way, but it's your outside influences, whether it's your friends, family, maybe something that's happened to you. I hear Rogan say this all the time, and I think it's super cool. You know, it's like, to put it in perspective a little bit more too, is like the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. You know, whether it's somebody made your latte wrong or somebody shot and killed your whole family in the middle of the night. You know, and that shit happens.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so
And the problem is too that one of the issues is though is like as you exist inside this house of stories with no view to the outside world, those stories become your identity. Right? So you can, and that can be a big problem. Like for me, and we'll get into this here in a little bit probably, but like for me, my job became my identity. Right?
hmm
How many people identify it as their job? Like how many people actually introduce themselves and say, "My name is Ben. I'm a firefighter." Like they don't, you know what I mean? Like
right.
it's the reality, the truth of it is we're fucking all so way, way fucking more than just our job. And oftentimes, specifically in the first responder world, that identity is associated to a definition that you've created in your mind, right? So a firefighter, a wildland firefighter, a hotshot, right?
hmm
It sees itself as, and this is how I saw myself, so I'm speaking from my perspective now, is this person who is incredibly resilient and could take whatever was thrown at him and just bury it down and keep going, right? That's what I thought I was. This rough exterior, super fucking strong dude who could just take it all. You know, the dead bodies, the suicides by your friends, like the destruction of many like communities just getting leveled and like all kinds of crazy shit, the lack of sleep, the damaged relationships, all this stuff. And the issue happens is when that definition gets challenged by feelings that don't line up with that definition anymore.
mm
And now you're like, oh, wait a minute. Like I'm having feelings that are contradicting what this identity, this definition of identity is. And that sends you down a fucking spiral. And so to me, when we talked about confidence, right? We're talking about like it's this toxic masculinity or whatever. I think we
Right.
should be masculine. Absolutely. I think there's something within the work that I do outside of fighting fire is there's a lot of men that don't know what masculine is anymore, because society or social media or whatever, this is my observation, is telling us what it shouldn't be or should be. And to me, it's about a confidence in knowing who you are as a person. And like a man can do many, many things, but it's the confidence in being balanced in yourself. And that doesn't have to be toxic. That can actually be very, very healing for people.
Sure.
Like I have two daughters and a wife, and one of the things that happened to me with this identity stuff was, at one point, it was like 2016 or so, I was having a real struggle with whether or not I wanted to keep doing this job, because I had these daughters and I was going to work, and it was all, just full on hardcore men, like pounding their fucking chest all the time, and whatever, and I was going through this kind of spiritual quest at the moment, and I realized, like, man, I can't talk to my daughters like hot shots when I come home. Like, that's not fair.
Yeah, you got to be able to turn that
I can't
off.
talk to my wife like she's a hot shot, or just understand it better, just like live in a state of balance, so that it's not so abrasive. And so, like, there's, that was kind of this process, and I was like, man, I don't, as I'm learning this, I was like, well, I'm like all masculine though. Like, that's a problem too. All man is too much too. Like, I have to have feminine energy, or I have to have a feminine characteristic, like, I'm not saying I wear dresses, but like I need to have like this feminine quality, because I have to interact with the feminine. I have to interact with my daughters. I have to, like, hug my wife, and I have to, like, I have to have these, I have to understand where she's coming from too, and so it's about understanding both and having the confidence, but not just the confidence, but just like the awareness of what you are as a man, and like what that responsibility is.
Sure.
It's not to be abrasive and aggressive. Of
Yeah,
course.
I get what you're saying there, but I also think that part of being a man, it's not just being masculine, like, oh, we beat our chests and run through fucking walls and go drink beer at the bar and then, whatever. Like, I think part of being a man, and I'm so fucking fortunate the way that I grew up, and the men that actually raised me were my grandfathers and uncles. And I grew up in an abusive household with my stepdads, I mean, beating the living shit out of my mom, to the point where, I would try to go in and stop it, but I was a kid, and then I'd get my ass kicked. And I think that was a huge learning lesson for me too. But if I didn't have those outside influences like my grandfather and uncles that taught me, like, women deserve the utmost respect, right? And that was by the way that they treat my mother, their wives, and they told that to me straight up, So I think that that's part of being a man too, is being respectful, right?
Absolutely.
Like, and
Totally.
being
Yeah.
genuine, and not being a bullshitter, like, there's a lot of, and having good work ethic, showing up on time. Like, there's all these different things that's part of being a man too. It's not just the masculinity thing, and I think,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think that, yeah, social media is kind of saying, or telling kids how to act and feel. And I don't know. I think that that's to each his own to figure out, a little bit. And kind of those brick houses, like you talked about, it kind of goes back to your stories,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
your experiences in life. Do you think that, maybe I'm going down a slippery slope here, but do you think that because of some of those social influences and this toxic masculinity stuff, that it's hurting career positions like wildland firefighters? Is kind of where I was going with it. Like, because you need a little bit of ego to do that sort of job, or to go be a special operator, or to be a police officer or something. You have to have some sort of, whether you're a male or not, if you're a female, you have to have some sort of masculine traits to go enforce something or combat something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. Like, is it hurting people getting the job? Like,
I don't think it's hurting
I don't
people
know
getting the
if.
job, but is it
Yeah.
hurting us as a general population of
Yeah.
actually getting the
Yeah.
job done?
Yeah. 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 Man, that's a great question. I don't. Man, I can only speak from my perspective. Like, You know, when I'm trying to hire somebody, I don't, I'm trying to hire good people, dude. That's just it. Like I want to hire a good person. I can make you a good hotshot. Like that's fine. Like, if you're a good person, like good people happen to be good hotshots. You know what I mean? The person that comes in with too much ego, too much piss and vinegar, that person's going to burn out, man. Because, and honestly, from my perspective, like, and some of the work I do outside the thing, like, there's some serious stories going on there. You know, they may not have had the same upbringing I had, or there might be some like imbalance between what a man is and should be or whatever.
Sure.
Like I think it's more, you know, it's yeah, I'm just my from my perspective what I'm trying to do is, you know, because most of the people that work on my crew are in their 20s, you know what I mean? I'm a fucking old man now, which is insane. At 41 years old, but like at you know they're in their 20s, and I tell them the first day, like, hey, like what I want you to do here while you're here, one of my intents is you being authentic. Like, learn how to be an authentic human. Like, don't give me what you think I want. Like, think outside the box. You need to be a self-starter. You need to be a self-thinker. You need to be into this shit too. Like, you can't just be here for a paycheck. I mean, we get those people for sure, but if they want to have a successful life, like, learn how to express yourself from an authentic place, because that is where beautiful things get created. And also, like, the organism that is a hotshot crew operates so much more efficiently when everybody is thinking for themselves, and also recognizing that the shortcomings or the lack of knowledge or awareness they have, and have the ability to ask questions and keep learning, and turns into this beautiful organism, this learning organism, and you can be very, very high functioning in that way. But getting people to even understand what being authentic is when you're 20 something years old is
That's
another
hard.
challenge in itself. Yeah. So it's like,
Yeah.
and what do you do? Like, what do you do? Like, well, what I can do is be that. I can at least show up and be that thing.
Be a good
If I'm acting
mentor,
from
man.
a,
Like, cause I didn't have, well,
yeah,
I
yeah,
guess I had some mentors, but maybe they weren't the best influences at that age, you know, like
totally.
on the back of a tour
Yeah. I
bus or
mean,
whatever. Right. Yeah.
yeah, I was just gonna say that, like, fucking, you know, I had some mentors, but the ones that I leaned into at times were the ones that could like shotgun 3 beers in a row, you know, like, so it's
The
like,
fun guys, man.
so
Yeah.
the fun guys, yeah, yeah, and there's time for that too, man. That's what your 20s is all about in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. But at some point, you know, when you're in high risk environments, you know, you want people that are paying attention. You know what I mean? And if you're always worried about what you think, if the people working for me are always worried about what they think I want them to be doing, then they're not paying attention to the fire environment and these high risk environments clearly. So to me, it's all about hiring good people and then working with them to develop themselves in a way that lets them live a full life. Like, I love what I do, but it is just a fucking small fraction of who I am. Very small fraction. And the mentoring aspect I really love, like teaching people how to be self leaders. You know what I mean? Like, these types of things are so much more valuable to me, because that's, I mean, the job fighting fire is super fun. Like, going to remote places all over the United States and getting dropped into a place, like I said, in Alaska, where there's just nothing around you but wild animals and fire is like so rad. But you know, like, that's not going to change humanity or this world in a positive way as much as turning one person into a really rock solid, awesome, authentic human. That ripple effect will last forever.
Well, it's awesome
So
that you're thinking outside of just the career, man. Because what a great mentor to have in that aspect, of more of a life mentor than just career mentor. You know, like I think people get so caught up in that. You mentioned it a few minutes ago that people identify with their jobs or what they do or whatever. And like one of the first questions is that people ask you, especially if you're on like an airplane and if you're anywhere near first class, which I hardly seldom am, but every time that I've sat in first class, the person sitting next to me goes, "Hey, da da da, you know, what do you do?" They want to know. It's like a status thing, right? Like,
oh yeah.
and then I don't know, man. It drives me a little insane. So I get where you're coming from there, and I really appreciate somebody like you taking the time to think outside the box of like, you're not just building your fire crew, man. You're building these people's future and trying to think outside the box for what's best for them and just genuinely help. That's pretty unheard of.
Yeah, and it speaks to really how I feel about it too, man. Like myself and my overhead and really everybody on the crew, but specifically for me, since this is what I'm talking about, is like they're my family, man. Like straight up, they're my fucking family. Like, and I don't have to just, I'm not just thinking about them. I'm thinking about their wives, their girlfriends, their kids, like the communities they live in. Like it's an extended family. Like, and I, in every essence of the word, believe that to be true. Whether you come through our crew for one season or you're there for 10 seasons, like whatever, man, like you are a part of this family now. Because I make decisions that affect people's lives straight up. Like I take that so fucking seriously. Like anything I say can change the course of the game or how somebody's thinking about something, and that could potentially have a very serious consequence or
Sure.
have a very beautiful like outcome, like whatever it is, right? So I see these people as my family and I love them dearly, and because of that I treat them as such. Like it's not just about the time that they're giving me or giving the crew while they're here. It's about their entire life.
Sure. And I mean, where did you kind of get some of your leadership philosophies or mentorship? Is it something that you've built yourself, or I'm sure you had some mentors yourself? You mentioned one a few minutes ago. Um,
Hmm.
but I think, a big thing about letting people kind of not micromanaging people is huge too, is what I found. It's like make a decision, execute it. If it's wrong or right, then we'll talk about it after the fact, but I think that that's
Yeah.
important. I'm sure it's a little bit different. I can't speak for being a wildland firefighter because I've never done it, but
Right. That's all
I'm
good.
sure it's a little bit
Yeah.
different when people's lives are on the line.
Yeah, I mean, task, purpose, end state is kind of like the leadership like framework, right? Like I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
give you a task, like I need to know, like I'm gonna give you what the purpose is behind it, so you understand why, and then what it needs to look like, and then give them the freedom to operate within that space. That's how we figure out the micromanaging shit. But as far as the how I figured out my leadership um, qualities or philosophies is, I mean, straight up mentorship. Really, it's by observation. Like at the end of the day, I've been paying attention to a lot of people, good and bad leaders, as to what's worked and what hasn't worked, and I am desperately, constantly tapping into that stuff, trying to make the best decisions I possibly can. And then, like, and a shout out to like my wife and my kid. Like my kids are like the best fucking goddamn mentors a person can have. Like in a lot of ways, the self development and philosophies that I've come to recently really, really like grew from a place of not wanting to be a shitty father and just like,
It's
what
crazy
do I
how much
do?
that'll change your life, man.
Yeah,
It is.
it's
It's
insane.
unbelievable. You can't explain it to somebody. You really can't.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it was like through the process of like, okay, like if I'm not going to be a crappy dad, like, okay, what are the things I need to make sure of that I don't do? Like then you learn about like neuroplasticity and how the first 7 years of a child's life, they like kind of become who they are because they have their neuroplasticity is the most plastic. So it's their learning centers, right? So they
Mm-hmm.
discover who they are within the first 7 years. And then from there to 14 is like another puberty and teenage years. So it's like the
So
first
crazy,
14
dude.
years of their. I have a 15-year-old right now and
Oh
a 13,
damn! I
almost
got
13-year-old
I
dude.
got
It's
one going
wild.
on 12, and so it's just I'm like, oh my god. And then the two others are a little bit younger, so I'm nervous. I'm gonna be calling you for
It's a good
advice,
time.
dude. We're gonna have one of these off the air. So.
Yeah, for sure. So, relation or child advice
Yeah.
podcast. That'd be funny. But how to deal with teenagers.
Right.
Yeah, man. So it's like learning about neuroplasticity. The first 14 years of a child's life, they become who they are, basically, right? There's very influential things. That's where they develop like other stories, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
building those foundational walls up. And so I'm like thinking once I'm learning this stuff, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what stories do I have? Like, what did I learn? And then it's this deep dive into myself and who I am as a person. And dude, I've been excavating garbage out of me for the last, really, really hard for like probably the last 12 years. And so through that process, one of the things I've come to understand is like, man, before we even ask anybody to lead anybody, we should be really good self leaders
Yeah.
and like walk the fucking walk, like understand who we are, like show the discipline, like show that balance, like show up every day, you know what I mean? And really put those feet forward in a positive direction the best you can. And that's what a good leader should embody. Before you lead anybody, we should be leading ourselves first.
Yeah, I think to take care of other people, you have to take care of yourself first, because if you're not in a good mental state, or you slip on that, or, like, it's a hard balance too, man. Like, I struggle with it all the time. Like, time is my biggest enemy, but also my greatest
Yeah.
friend, man. Like, I cherish all the time, but I always want to be in 7 different places at once, right? Like, so
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have to kind of figure out that balance of like, okay, if I want to be physically fit, I need to spend this much time a week doing it. Like, I break it down to like a schedule, and it doesn't always work out. I mean,
Yeah.
shit comes up, right? Like, but
Totally.
I think that that's part of it, is like making yourself feel good first before you can help others feel good. Because if you just sacrifice all the time, that's not healthy either. But then you got to prioritize. It's so hard with me with having a family and kids, and then I have the podcast, which I truly and genuinely enjoy doing and love doing, because we're having conversations like this. Like, I don't get that anywhere else. You don't get that sitting at a bar. You don't get that through a text
Totally.
message. You don't get it
Yeah.
through just a one-on-one conversation is hard to have these days, whether even in your family, man. To the point, like,
Yeah.
I've started just for personal stuff, I've gained so much value in what I've learned in the podcast, and I've learned so much about my kids. And this sounds fucked up,
Mm.
but I'll sit down and they enjoy it. But I'll bring them in the studio, put them on a mic. They like listening to themselves, and then you can have a real conversation where it's like, "Hey, we're kind of on tape. Be genuine. It's not fake. Like, I'm gonna ask you about like what." And now they're to the point where they're like, "Dad, when are we gonna do our next one?" So now we have these
That's
like,
dope.
I have like probably 30 episodes of just the kids. And then I started thinking about it. I
So
was like,
awesome.
God, it's not very often that you can sit down in an uninterrupted situation and have a conversation. It's very seldom. And
Yeah.
there's two spots that I found it, and it's in the backcountry, bow
Yeah,
hunting or
for sure.
whatever, or in the
Yeah.
podcast studio. Now
Yeah. Well,
it's kind of
that's
cool.
something so it's so cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm just starting my podcast career or whatever, and for the same reasons, it's undeniable watching like uh, with all the technology shit that's happened in the last few years, like the craziness, like man, podcasting has been so fascinating. Like it's one of the it's such an like I really do think that humans have lost this ability to set like positive intentions in their lives and then follow through with them. And podcasting in a way is like intentionally setting time to have deep conversations with people. And I think that is just, man, it's so incredible. Like it's not only is it incredible, but it's also like this interesting space, right? So like for me, one of my values is living a life of servitude. And I'm in a service type of thing, right? Where I'm a wildland firefighter. A lot of people would say that, yeah, you're a wildland firefighter, you're living a life for servitude. But I think a lot of times we don't really look at what that means very correctly. So, living a life of servitude for me though is creating a space that when people enter into it, they can find their true self, their authentic self. And the podcast environment allows for some very authentic conversations for those to take place. You know what I mean? And I think that it's beautiful that you're having those conversations with your kids. that's an intentional conversation to spend time with your children and actually understand who they are. Like, man, that is fucking awesome, dude.
It's
Hats
been
off to you.
incredible for
That's
me, man. Like
beautiful.
I had no idea. Like when I started the podcast, it was to help educate other people that were living in mountain communities, and I was trying to fill a
Yeah.
gap. And then I was going to start another one that was more like kind of the selfish thing, like stories from the road, with my roadie buddies and stuff. And that
Sure.
one's still going, which is super cool. But what I've learned in over 100 episodes or whatever is just like now it's more about me. Who do I want to talk to? And
That's what's
if
up,
people
man.
listen, great. If they don't, they can turn it off, whatever. I'm still doing
Yeah.
it for me, man. Because I get
That's
so
good.
much out of these, man. Like somebody else's
Yeah.
perspective is so important. And I feel like it's made me a better person. And then hearing it from your own
Yeah.
family or kids, it's even better, man. It's pretty cool. So,
And that's it. That's really it, man. I truly believe that the best things that people create come from a place that that where they want to do it. It's their thing. So continue to do that, man, because the things you're doing from that place are going to be badass.
and I keep losing a camera here. Let me see what's going on with it.
Okay.
Sorry, dude. So
Sweet.
sorry, man. I
Yeah,
lost
all
you
good,
there for
man.
a second with cameras. Technology just screwed up our
For sure.
conversation.
No way, man. No way.
So, one of the things I got to ask, and I definitely want to get
Hmm.
into some other things with you, so I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but I'm sure that you've
Hmm.
had some crazy moments, like being on the front lines of fires. It's, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but, I grew up in Colorado. One of the fires I
Hmm.
got evacuated from was the Hayman fire. And we went in on the
Hmm.
fire line being stupid kids and going
Hmm.
into our house to rescue a puppy. It was a girlfriend's puppy or something like that. And then get some
Hmm.
family photos out of another friend's house that actually burned, which was kind of cool. But
Hmm.
some of the stuff that I saw in there just on the fire line was insane. Like pine trees basically exploding, like from the sap,
Hmm.
and just
Hmm.
crazy type stuff. Like I don't know if it's just like when it's in a campfire and a cinder pops out, of a little log or something like that. But the fire was
Hmm.
burning hot and fast and hard, and um, I'm sure that dealing with wildlife in those situations can't be. I'm sure you guys have had some moments like that too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, man, I could go on and on with crazy ass stories or whatever. And really it's kind of hard to like describe like the intensity of things because it's without being there, it's almost hard to fathom like how intense things can be, right? When you're driving down an interstate and you have a wall of fire on both sides of a 4-lane highway or something like this, and it's the flames are 300 feet tall, and it's just like you can feel the heat radiating through the car windows even with the AC on full blast. Or you're at Sierra Tahoe Ski Resort during the Caldor fire, and the entire resort is burning to the ground around you, and you're parked in place in a parking lot because there's literally nothing you can do. Or you're underneath a column that is on the Delta fire. That's or not the Delta fire. It was the Car fire in Redding, California. That's burning, consuming so much fuel that the hot air is condensing high in the sky, turning to clouds. It gets super heavy, and then that cloud collapses, sending 70-mile-an-hour winds straight down to the ground and push fire all out in all different directions, and
Holy shit!
everything just instantly
So it's just
ignites.
changing the
So it's like
atmosphere.
100%. Yeah. So I mean, there's literally it's intense. The environment can be extremely intense, but we pride ourselves being hotshots. That is being professional risk mitigators, and we always make sure that one of the things I tell the crew is like always have a safe place to go. Just always have a safe place to go. And if you can make sure that's in place, then you can do a lot of things. So
Yeah, well, we'll have to dive into some more stories later on when we run out of stuff to talk about in these next like 50 episodes. Um,
yeah.
so let's dive into. you kind of mentioned a little bit the pay, just so people understand how inefficient the pay scale is for somebody that fights wildland fires. Can you kind of dive in, or
Sure.
do you feel comfortable speaking about some of that?
Yeah, yeah. I don't mind, like I'm just gonna speak from my perspective and what I've seen, and for the longest time, man, it's kind of we kind of need to know the history a little bit. We're not classified as firefighters, we're forestry technicians.
Mm-hmm.
From my perspective, that because of that classification, we haven't been able to come to the table in a real way to get the same benefits and stuff like this as a firefighter would. So the benefits aren't the same. There's the pay wasn't the same. Retiring, like all that stuff just wasn't the same as like someone working for a city or a state department. And because of that, a few years back, was it 2 or so years ago, 3 years ago maybe, in California, the state minimum wage was actually higher than our entry level position because we're a
What?
federal agency. Yes.
How's that even
So
possible, man? That's insane.
exactly. I mean, Biden fixed it, like when he bumped everything up to like $15 an hour or whatever it was. So like
Mm-hmm.
now our entry level position is fine, but pay was a big reason that we were having these catastrophic wildland fires and we weren't able to staff all of our engines and all these things because we couldn't hire anybody. So the infrastructure bill actually that was passed by the president is supposed to fix the classification, and it's supposed to come up with some sort of solution around pay. So last year we got like a $20,000 supplemental pay type of thing, and I'm not the best person to be asking all these questions, honestly.
Sure.
Like Brandon be a better person, or someone
We've
from the
talked about it a
grassroots
little bit
wildland
with
fire.
Brandon, but I
Yeah,
get it.
cool. So it's the pay is just it's an issue. Um, Man, and really honestly, man, it's one of the things for me, dude, is that it's sad when you have people that work for you and you know a young couple gets married and they're like, man, like I legitimately can't afford to have a child right now because it's like I can barely afford my gas to get to work. And it's like, damn, dude, like we can't even pay people a livable wage that allows them to start a family in
Right.
many ways, and like to me it's just the wrong thing to be doing, and it's the same stories over and over and over again, and our facilities are pretty garbage in a lot of places. People are camped out of their trucks and stuff in the parking lot at the base at our bases because there's no barracks or they're not livable. And it's like, man, this is how we're treating our first responders here. Like, this is just not the right thing we should be doing. And those are the types of things I'm really glad that we have like the grassroots wildland firefighter folks who are working on these things. Like the folks like Brandon who are in the can talk about this shit all the time, dude. Because as much as I want to be involved with this stuff, it is a fucking energy suck. It's like, man, I need to get to.
It's a
Oh,
whole
dude,
nother
it's
full
just
time
brutal,
job,
dude.
man. Yeah.
It's brutal. It's brutal, and I want to focus on developing healthy crew members and fighting fire safely and like and getting after it and trying to enjoy our jobs and shit, and for me, what happened to me is I realized that I got to a place where I realized my personal value. And it's like, man, I can't keep doing this job forever, I don't think, like at some point I'm gonna have to retire or quit or whatever. But what other value do I have? Because a lot of times we in the fire service we feel like the only thing we're good at, especially if you start your job at 19 years old, 2 days after graduating high school, it's like all I've done is this, and you think like, well, all I can do is fire. And I'm of the a belief that actually we all have a lot of value, like so I started like an LLC to talk about self leadership stuff and do some consulting work. I'm trying to start a podcast. I got many other irons in the fire with mental health things and a nonprofit coming soon. So like like eh, I don't know. I don't honestly I appreciate the question a lot, and I think there's a lot of people
Hmm.
that want me to talk about this, but I'm I'm getting to a point in my life where I just don't give a shit anymore. Which is really which is like just really kind of sad, because I've been
Yeah, it
pushed
is, man.
and I've been pushed enough to where I'm just like, I don't want to keep talking about this shit anymore.
Well,
It's
I
like,
think the conversations that I've had with Brandon and some of my other friends that are in the same career path as you, and maybe not quite as big as Hot Shots or whatever, but they all do this for it's not for a paycheck, honestly. I mean, it's a paycheck at the end of the day, but it's really, these people are genuinely passionate about what they do. And
yeah,
I think the more that we shit on them, the less people are going to want to do this job, man. Like
yeah,
I
it's
just,
true.
that's why I'd like to shed a light on it. And that's why I like to try to talk about it. What's the best way if somebody wanted to advocate for you guys, or just maybe they don't have time to advocate, maybe they want to just help? What's the best
Yeah,
way? What's the best foundation out there right now that's genuinely
yeah,
helping you guys?
yeah. I'll send you the link in the show notes. I don't think I sent you this, but it's the
Okay.
Grassroots Wildland Firefighters. They're
Yeah,
they're
if you go and listen
yeah,
to
they're doing.
Brandon's episode 2, which I think was 98, um, we talked about it in there, and there's a link in there right now too. But we'll put it in the show notes as well. There'll be a live link.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, they're the ones crushing it, man. Really, without them, a lot of this reform stuff wouldn't even be on the table. So, and I'm all about helping and stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, but
Mm-hmm.
I've spent a lot of time pissed off. You know what I mean? Just like a lot of time, just like shaking my head, like pissed off. Like, why is it so hard just to take care of people the
Mm-hmm.
best way we can? But we work for a federal agency, man, and the shit moves super, super slow. I'm not saying that that's an excuse, but it's just the way it is right now. And I'm kind of tired of coming home pissed off at the agency, and I'd rather just enjoy my fucking job and the people that work with me, and provide the best possible experience that I can. And that reduction of stress has helped me out quite a bit.
Yeah, no
so
joke. I can
so it's
imagine,
like,
dude. Yeah,
yeah, so like
it's
the
kind of
Brandons and
out
the
of your
grassroots
hands,
folks,
right? Like, yeah.
there's only so much I can do, you know what I mean? And I mean, a big part of it too, and one of the reasons why you'll see me in other podcasts, or you'll see the Vice video or other things that I've done in the media, is because I have a willingness to talk about it. So, and I will talk about it for sure. The
Mm-hmm.
just the thing I want to like highlight is things are changing also. Like, in the past, when I've been very vocal about it, things were not really in place yet. They weren't really changing. We were trying to gain a voice, because you can't be that quiet hero type of person and then ask for a bunch of changes with no culture not even knowing who the hell you are.
Exactly.
Like, no one knows who a hotshot is, but yet we're asking for a ton of money.
Yeah.
Like, so if we're not in the limelight just a little bit, how can we ask for these reforms? So a lot of the stuff I've done have been all about educating the public and people in general to just, hey, we're out here doing things, and we're in need of help. Like, our suicide rates were, I don't know the numbers right now, but they were something like 3 times higher than the general population. And so, like,
Oh, it's
they
crazy, man.
comparative to the military and stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I can, in 2020, like, I was contemplating suicide for the first time. It got that bad for me. So it's a very real thing. And when you're asking for things and asking for reforms and no one knows who you are, like, I don't know how you get what you get, or get what you're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very important part of this conversation, and I'm very happy that Grassroots and, Brandon on the Anchor Point, and you, honestly, giving these people space to talk about these things is very important, because we need the public in our corner to be asking for these things. And finally, things are happening. It's slow. It's not at the pace we want it to happen, but there's talks of pay classification got passed in law, so that should be happening soon. Like, when
And
people
another
get
point is,
sick.
I mean,
Yeah,
wildfires are not getting any smaller; they're only getting bigger at
and
this point, and
longer
longer.
duration
Yeah,
year round. Yeah,
yeah.
100%. So it's in a good direction. I think I'm staying positively optimistic, but I'm also trying not to invest as much of my energy into it anymore, and I'm trying to invest more energy into the crew and developing good people that give a shit about living the best possible life.
Yeah, I think you'll get more self reward out of that than you will on the
think
other
so.
end, I think, dude, personally. Those are just
Yeah,
my thoughts.
I hope so.
So I get it
Yeah, for sure.
100%. Um,
Yeah.
dude, you mentioned something a minute ago, and I feel awkward asking about this, but I've lost a few friends even this year, a family member to suicide recently in the last couple of years. And it seems to be something that's really plaguing the country. Um, it's plaguing the world in general, but specifically the United States. And we've done a full episode on suicide awareness, because it's another thing that I'm super passionate about. If you're okay, would you mind sharing your kind of
Absolutely.
moment with contemplating taking your own
Totally.
life? And like, I mean, we can go as deep as you want, dude. You can end it at any time that you want. Like, I'm not prying, but
No.
the reason why I think it's important to share that is if one person out there relates to what you were going through and what kind of brought you out of that darkness, then maybe that'll help one person. Maybe it'll help 100.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah. Thank
I
you.
think it's important to. One thing I've also learned about podcasting is it's okay to share your feelings. It's okay to be genuine. It's okay to
Yeah.
have these moments, and if you're comfortable talking about
Yeah.
it, I would like to hear your story because even I can learn from it.
Yeah. I'd love to. Yeah. Thank you for asking. Like this is, when I talk about what I'm doing in I guess the personal aspect of my life outside of fire, it has to do mostly around mental health with first responders. And the reason why is because in 2020, I found myself, in 2020, it was the year I got my job, my dream job, the superintendent of my hotshot crew. And it happened in April. It's 2020. COVID is fucking going off, like crazy. I'm trying to navigate this new position and lead these men and women around that. And also, we had the most epic year in California history from my perspective during that time as well. We had the Million Acre Fire. We had the North Complex, which was massive as well, and a few others that were just really, really big, very devastating fire season. I never once during that fire season felt guilty or sad or woe is me or anything. I actually I recall being very driven and focused and had a really good time and had amazing supporting cast underneath me helping us get through the crew or get through that fire season. And never once did I feel sad, really. I was like very excited, honestly. It was a really good fire season. And we did some amazing things, and everybody came home safely and no injuries or anything. So it wasn't until like November when we were transitioning, right? And that word's very important, is this transition from being gone we did a 1,300-hour overtime season, which is it's a lot. And between May and the beginning of November, and that transition from going balls to the wall, living in a state of stress for over 6 months or whatever, to nothing, and just being like, man, I really am looking forward to this break. I need to have a break. I'm super excited just to relax, spend some time with my family and all this shit. And that's not what happened. There was just more asking of me to continue to perform and to do and to take on priorities given from other people from like a management perspective, or like sitting at a computer all day just typing administrative bullshit. And I never got the break that I was looking for. And I started contemplating to myself this, like, man, is this fucking worth it? Like, my job is less about fighting fire and more about making sure other people don't fucking die. I get paid next to nothing to do this shit. I don't have any other skills, that was all in my mind too. And like, am I just going to live on this perpetuating hamster fucking wheel the rest of my life, just getting my ass handed to me, not seeing my family, and then fucking, doing administrative stuff and being asked to fight fire in other states during the wintertime. And then come retirement, my body's so broken that I can't even enjoy the things I enjoy now, outside of the job. Is this going to be my life now? And the question that popped in my head the first time ever was, well, maybe I'll just step off the fucking hamster wheel in my life and just get this shit over with. Because clearly I'm not enjoying myself. I'm a total pain in the ass to my family. Like maybe me not being here would be better for them. And so I remember very vividly, like one morning, it was a day off. It was in November. I'm sitting on the edge of my bed, my room. The windows are open. It was such a beautiful day. The sun was coming in. I could feel the sun. It felt good. And I'm like trying to put on my running shoes because the way I cope with stress, or I've always coped with stress in the past, has been working my ass off, working out, destroying my body, running or lifting weights or hiking or whatever it is, and drinking my face off. It was a combination of those two things. And I just remember sitting on my bed, just like beautiful day, like trying to strap my running shoes on and just feeling just so low and so just over it. And just like, I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be here. And so I was like a arm's distance away from my handgun safe in my closet. And I remember just thinking, like, I could just do it right now. Nobody's home. I can just like do this real quick and then, like be done with it. And as I stood up to make a decision of going to my safe, I found myself just like immediately, like someone dumped a bucket of cold water on me. And I was like, woke up. I was like, what the fuck, dude? Like, what the fuck am I doing right now? Like, and it just all the emotions came rushing in. I'm crying. I'm like, what the fuck? It's a very powerful, very visceral experience. I like can very much take myself back there right now and see myself in that moment. Not from a place of like, I can do that again, but from a place of like, it was just very powerful. And finding myself just like, I need to do something. I can't do this. I need to fucking get help. Like, I have to tell somebody. I have to tell my wife about this shit. And so I told my wife. And when she came home, I pulled her to the side and crying my ass off. And I just told her, I was like, I'm struggling really bad. I'm having thoughts of suicide and I need help. And I told her what I wanted to do. And she's like, message received. And we'll make it happen. So I sat with myself for a long time and I'm really open about this shit. I'm going to fucking say what I did because I think it's important for people to know. Like, I did not have success with therapists and I didn't want to be on a fucking medication. I'm a incredible health nut. Like, people, my wife will attest to that. Most people that know me will attest to that. And as a kid, I was on fucking Ritalin for a long time. So I didn't want to be on medication, and therapists weren't working. So I found a place legally where I could do psilocybin mushrooms to heal from what I needed to be healed from, or at least just like give me something, something that I knew could potentially help me just by reading stories and like what other, Johns Hopkins is doing with that stuff and like all these things. So, like, I did a bunch of research and I found something and I got some perspective I got the perspective I needed. And really one of the things that happened is I set myself a goal to become a hotshot superintendent and I got that shit. And then there was like, then what?
Right.
Now what? Like, what's my next goal? Like, I reached my goal. Like, what the fuck? And like, I didn't know what to do. You know what I mean? And I'll talk about what my goal is now because I learned something during that experience. And part of what happened what I identified was my needs versus my wants were just all fucked up. Like, what I thought I needed versus what I wanted, it was just all messed up, man. And I realized like our life is just a compilation of entering and exiting moments endlessly. Like, we're just entering and exiting moments endlessly. And I came to a realization like, man, it doesn't matter if I end myself in this moment, I'm just going to be over here in this moment, looking back at that moment, wishing I would have done more with that moment. Like, it's not, there's nothing really changes. So I'm just like, oh, I should just enjoy the moment I have right fucking now that's in front of me. But to do that, I had to understand like what I needed to be successful and what I truly needed to live a successful life. And I came up with a list, and the first three things on there is I need to make sure I'm taking care of this fucking chemistry experiment we call a body first. So I need to make sure
I don't
I
mean
need
to
to make sure
laugh,
I need to
dude, but
sleep.
like,
Yeah, yeah, that's
fuck,
what's
man, you
up.
just took me down a dark. Man, I'm emotional now, but I'm glad
It's
you're here,
okay.
dude, and I'm glad that you're sharing these moments. And thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I've lost a lot of people too, dude, and I keep losing them. And one of the reasons why I very much enjoy speaking about this is because I want to let people know that they're not fucking alone, dude. And the deep dark shit that we go through oftentimes can be the most important part of our life if we choose courage, and we choose courage to move past what that is and learn from it and apply it to our fucking lives. And that's the point behind this, like sleep, nutrition, and movement. Take care of your chemistry experiment. For
Huge.
me, that's what I need.
Hmm.
Take care of the chemistry. If you can nail those three things, it puts you in, it would put me in a place that I could now find myself in a place of observation where I can observe myself like a person. And I talk about it in these terms, like pretend like you're someone at a park, sitting on a park bench, watching people play in a park, like the man throwing his dog for his frisbee. Maybe that's joy in your life.
Yeah.
You see an old person, two old people walking and holding hands that are down the park, just maybe that's love. You see someone angry because they stepped in dog shit, like that's anger. Whatever,
I hate stepping in
whatever
dog
it
shit.
I do too. Like whatever those are your emotions, those are your
Yeah.
stories, those are the things that you're seeing, but you're not identifying to any of them, right? You're just casually observing them be themselves, and you're the guy sitting on the park bench. That's observation to me. It's observing yourself and your emotions and the things that you should be unattached to, and letting them fucking pass by, like not attached to them, but feel them, right? They're important. Feelings are important. So it put me in a place of observation so that I could observe myself and how I reacted to the external world. And then it gave me a place to like the other need that I have is like don't identify with anything, because everything fucking changes. That's the point,
Yeah.
right? Like everything changes. The Buddha said the only thing that is permanent is impermanence, right? No man, and then another beautiful philosopher said, like, no man steps in the same river twice, right? Because the river is never the same and the
It's
man is
always
never the
moving.
same.
Yep.
It's always moving. So, like, everything changes, man. Your feelings, your job, you can change your fucking name, the place you live, like, all these things. Like, you don't identify with anything, like, because they can all be changed. It doesn't mean that don't embody the positive things that those things can give you. Just understand that these things can change. So don't identify. I often tell people, like, I say this to myself, I am who I am when I am not. When I don't identify with these things, I'm much closer to the thing I truly am than I am if I'm identifying with things.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then there's acceptance is my next need. Like, accept that there is things just out of your fucking control, right? Like, I hated the word fate growing up. Like, don't tell me that shit. I'm the creation. I create my own destiny, motherfucker. Like, fate is just, that's bullshit. But
Hmm.
it's kind of also true. Like, if you're driving down the damn road, boom, 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 and someone rear ends you, like, dude, I'm sorry, man. Wrong place, wrong time. Like, that
Right.
was a compilation of events that were taking place, cause and effect over and over and over again that just led to you getting smashed, like, without your awareness to it. So there's really no reason to get pissed off about it, right? That's happening at a large scale, right? So, but what you do have control over is my next need is your creation of your thoughts. So how you react to that situation is how you're going to project yourself out into the world. So understand that you do have control of your destiny by the way you are perceiving things coming in and the way you project them out. And that's for everybody. Like the person that's yelling at you and telling you you're a piece of shit, all that stuff, that's a reflection of how they're feeling in the moment. It has nothing to do with you, right? That's just how they're taking that information and pushing it back out. So So creation through thoughts. The next one for me, and I think a lot of people who are fucking doers or can relate to this, is stillness. I need to create stillness in my life because I'm someone who wants to do a million things at once. It's really hard for me to sit down and just sit. Like I can watch like 15 minutes of a Netflix show and then I'm up like doing something else while the
Yep.
show's playing in the background. And I come back, I'm like, fuck, I missed the whole damn show. So for me, it's about telling myself like, hey man, sometimes it's okay to just be still. Like find a meditation practice, like find a quiet spot, like go outside and just sit and look at something awesome for a little bit. Like create stillness in your life because it's important.
Have
Yeah,
you
go ahead.
have you shot archery at all, or?
Yes, I grew up shooting archery. Yeah,
Okay. For me, my meditation is an active meditation. So whether it's zoning
absolutely.
out on a run or shooting my bow or playing a game of pool, whatever it is,
Totally.
like
Yeah,
I think there's different ways to meditate than just sit there too, like I think
a
that
hundred
that's a
percent.
misconception, I think that you can get a lot out of, like for example, riding a dirt bike. You don't think about much else other than being on that thing and trying to stay on it, right? Like there's
Mm-hmm.
there's
Mm-hmm.
certain little things like that, and if you can find something that you truly enjoy and that basically blocks out all the other shit, like did I pay my mortgage, is my wife happy with me, is am I being a good dad, all that stuff goes out the window. If you can find something
Mm-hmm.
like that kind of erases your mind, even if it's for a split second through an archery shot or whatever it
Yes,
is,
yes,
yeah.
yes, yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. In fact, like I've tried sitting and meditating like a million times, dude. I always end
Does
up just
not work
falling
for me,
asleep.
man.
I'm I work out, I ride my mountain bike, I go snowboarding, I get in
Hmm.
the backcountry, shooting archery, even just fucking handgun shooting, like anything that can get me in like somewhat of a flow state in any way to, like you said, quiet the noise.
Yeah,
And oftentimes I teach people or tell people like, dude, meditating or mindfulness can be one breath. If you can just
sure.
like take a deep breath and just like, like let go, like boom, you did it. Like that's it could be that simple, you know. So I
Yeah.
agree, and oftentimes, and I'm not. I've come to realize I did go through a period of my life where I was like, man, I got to sit here for 20 minutes and cross-legged and do my ohms and things. And it's like, no, you
You
know,
got to
I don't
figure
think
it
that's
out.
it for me. You got to figure out what works best for you, just like
Yeah.
anything else. And
Everybody's
that's,
an
you know,
individual too, man. Like what works for me is not going to
absolutely.
work for you, so
100%, and that goes with this needs list that I'm talking about. You know, like I got stillness, and then I have the last one I have on here is letting go. Like just let go. I mean, we're let go of the fucking bullshit. Don't hold on to all the crap that's happening. Your stories, your all these things. Like give time to look at these things, and
hmm.
then just fucking let it go, dude. The easier the better we get at letting go of things, the easier life gets because you are going to have the ultimate let go at some point, which is when you pass away. So being able to let go also gives you the ability to invest in your relationships and see the people you love in a much easier way because they're not going to be with you forever. Like be with them then. Be with them and love them. Love yourself. You're not going to be here forever. That's
Yeah.
all that shit, right? And it's not and like some people ask me like, "Oh, you don't have community on there." Like I've always had community. It wasn't a need. It wasn't something I was missing. You know, so there's like we were just talking about, this list can be for a lot of these things people might relate to, but maybe there's other things that work better for you or whatever. And then
Sure.
my wants became this like I still wanted shit, like absolutely. I just had a better intention behind it. I wasn't wanting something because I needed it to fill a void in my life, a void of love or acceptance or whatever it was. It was just like, no, I want this cool ass gun or this bow or these new hiking boots or this badass truck because it's just going to make life more fun. Like
It does, dude.
driving dope trucks is fun. Yeah, it's just like enriches the life. So it's like
Yeah.
it's okay to have wants. Just understand they're not there to replace something that you think you're missing because everything you have is
That's a
in you
dangerous
already.
circle right there. It's
Yes.
trying to, yeah, fill those
Yes.
voids. Yeah. And I think,
Yeah. So and
I
that's it,
think
man.
one thing,
That's what I
do
learned
you, yeah, no, that's incredible, man. Thanks for sharing it. I really appreciate you being
for
so
sure.
open, man. Like, it's very
Yeah.
unusual to find somebody that genuinely cares about other people and is so open with their personal life, man. Like, dude, I'm so glad that Brandon set us up to talk tonight, man. This is incredible,
Yeah,
dude. Like, this is making
I
my week
appreciate
for
that.
sure.
Right
So,
on.
going, I think, looking at your parameters and your list and that sort of thing, do you think, and kind of what I'm getting out of it a little bit, and maybe I'm perceiving it wrong, is kind of living in the moment and not worrying so much about the future and or the past. I know that's kind of a cliche thing, and it's been super popular lately, but I think that there's some truth to that, man. Is just like trying to just be present in the moment, because if you're sitting there worrying about the past or something you might have said or did or whatever, then you're genuinely not there in the moment to spend time with your kids, or if those thoughts are running through your head. And I think that that's
Oh
a
yeah.
hard cycle to break too, man. It's really hard, especially if you have any sort of guilt or anything like that.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's something. I think it's something that comes with age too, a little bit, is kind of understanding how to manage that. Like you had mentioned earlier, so many of the people that I know that have taken their lives lately have been young, and I think that they feel like trapped or cornered, and there's no way out. And kind of what you explained, it's like I'm just on this hamster wheel and like nothing's changing,
Yeah.
you know.
Well,
And
I think the sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, I just think that like, like you mentioned earlier, and your awesome analogy of building those bricks, I think like sometimes you need to build another brick, dude, to get, or build a window would be a better analogy, right? So you can see
Hmm.
look at it from a different perspective. Maybe talk to somebody and get somebody else's perspective. I think that's one
Yeah.
thing we're getting out of podcasting too, is you can genuinely listen to somebody else's perspective. We just heard yours, like
Yeah.
I think that that's important.
Yeah. I think, and I didn't. It's for some reason I didn't mention it, but one of my other needs is actually sharing perspective, because I do think that
Mm-hmm.
this I think I said it earlier, like sharing perspective from my perspective is how we collectively grow closer together. You know, I may have this, I may have my cell phone here, and I can see, here, I'll show this side. You can see the back of the cell phone. I can see the front of the cell phone. We know conceptually that this concept of cell phone exists, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if it was stationary and it couldn't move, I can tell you what the front looks like. You tell me what the back looks like. Maybe someone tells me what this corner edge feels like or whatever. And this is how we collectively rotate this motherfucker so that we understand what it is collectively, right? And it's from experience. Like, you're experiencing the backside of this cell phone, and I'm experiencing the front side. Opinions, the way I see it, lack information,
Sure.
right? But we oftentimes share opinions over perspective.
Especially
And
now.
so,
Yeah.
oh yeah, dude. So it's perspective is extremely important. And a lot of people, and that's why I'm here. I'm here to share my perspective because I want to know you, man. I want to know Bobby. I want to know what your story is. I want to know I desperately want to know where you want to go as a person. Like, what's important to you? That's awesome, man. Where are you going to create that authentic thing? That's super, super powerful, because I've lost a lot of friends too. I've lost a lot of really close people to suicide, and it's sad, man. And I can't speak about exactly where those people were, but I can potentially relate. And a lot of it was coming from a place of fear for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, fear, for me, fear is our emotions, and fear is a gift. If we look at fear correctly, it is a gift. The fear of not having shelter led to skyscrapers. The fear of not having
Yeah.
food led to agriculture. You know what I mean? Like, the fear can absolutely be used to create amazing things. But there's always an opposite. There's always a duality of everything, right? And the duality or opposite of fear is doubt. And doubt is what stops creation. And the thing we fear more than anything else, at least from what it was for me, is not being loved, dude. Like, we have this innate fear of not being loved. and it honestly like manifests and comes out in this feeling of not being good enough, not being worthy, not being good enough, you know?
I've
And
worked
and
for a
that's
lot
where it
of
got
high
I got to
profile.
this point.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to I'll come back to it. Keep going. I'm sorry, Ben. Big dumb
No,
guy.
it's
Like
okay. And
some
it's
brain popped in the, yeah. I gotta talk now.
no, it's all
Yeah.
good.
No, keep going.
I mean, well, that's also part of the
Right.
virtual world, right? It's pretty hard. So, but yeah, so it's like, just the fear is, coming from that place of not being loved, and it manifests a lot of ways of like not being good enough, and man, I'm here to tell people, man, and it's hard. It's really, really hard for people to understand this sometimes, especially when people are suffering. But man, love exists inside you, and you can tap into that shit whenever the fuck you want. You just have to understand that it's there, and you are good enough. You are good enough. And we need to figure out where that story came from. Where did you learn the first time that you were told that and to believe that? Because it was probably when you were a kid. And it was probably passed down from a parent or someone close to you, that was passed down from their parents, that's passed down from their parents, that passed down from theirs. This generational bullshit. So if we can understand that love comes with inside of us, and we can tap into that shit whenever we want, we can start to see that there's love. Love is almost made up of everything now. Like this
Yeah.
energy exists, and
You're
we
so
can see
right, man.
like,
There's
okay, why
nothing
don't
like unconditional love, and nobody will show that to you more than your own children. If you're a good parent,
oh
you know what I mean? Like there's nothing.
seriously.
I mean, you can't you can't explain that to somebody that doesn't have kids. I don't think. Like you can't explain the feeling or know what unconditional love is without having a kid, man. I got
Mhm.
3 of them, and I can attest to all of them were the same exact feeling. And as they grow
Yeah,
older, it tends to go away.
uh,
You know.
man, I was talking about this with my wife because my daughter, my oldest daughter, just had her 15th birthday on the 28th, and I was texting her because we just got back from Mexico. My wife and I went on a vacation because our anniversary is also on the 28th. So
Oh,
so we went on our anniversary thing. So anyways, I was texting her, and
nice.
I
Happy
texted her this
anniversary.
like really, yeah, thanks, man. And anyways, I was just reminiscing of when she was born. I was talking to my kid, and I was just telling her, I was like, man, you taught me what it was to love. Like, and I love my wife. Don't get me wrong, but when you have a child, man, like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like they're you, like, and they're this other, like, what? Like, how did I do this? Like, it's so, you're just like, I just don't want to fuck this thing up so bad. Like, I
Yeah.
love it so much. You know what I mean?
Oh
So,
man,
yeah,
it's
I
crazy.
agree. Kids are great.
That's a crazy point. And back to what I was gonna jump in when I interrupted you there. There was a little bit of an internet lag, so I'm sorry about that. But I've worked for a lot of really high profile people, and mainly rock stars and divas and all this sort of stuff. And
Hmm.
man, it's crazy. I've gotten to know some of them personally, and I'm not gonna mention any names or anything, but like that's the one thing. I mean, some of these people had everything you can imagine, but they had nobody to share it with, man. They honestly were not loved. It's like,
Hmm.
and there's a huge void there, and they were miserable people, and some of them treated other people like shit. Some of them used drugs and alcohol to help mask that or cope with some of that. Some of them just never stopped working. Like
Yeah.
there's so many different rabbit holes that you can fall down. But you're 100% spot on, man. In my perception and what I've perceived and what I've seen some people go through is like, I think we get caught up in the material world a little bit, with the latest iPhone or whatever, or success, or like, I want success with the podcast. I want, success with my home life. Like, I really think it's, taking a step back, a couple steps back and looking at it perspective wise, like, what am I really trying to achieve? And can I achieve it without
Yeah.
doing a bunch of stupid bullshit along the way,
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it really, what kind of happened was, after I saw some of this discovered shit, I started to realize like, well, okay, okay, so I know what my needs and wants are. Like, how am I going to live my best possible life? Like, what's fucking truth? And that's part of my curiosity, my curious nature is I try and identify like, or try and really understand like a specific word or the specific meaning behind a term or whatever. And like, what does that all mean? Like, what is true? Like, what do I value as a person? And so I got to this point where I was like looking at these different things and I started to realize like, wow, my life is like comprised of many, 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 many different realities. In fact, some people might say endless realities. On one hand, I'm a wildland firefighter, I'm a hotshot. On the other hand, I'm a husband. On another reality, I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm a mountain biker when I'm on my mountain biker, I'm a snowboarder when I'm on my snowboard, and so on and so forth. These are all different sets of realities that exist, right? And these realities are built on concepts. And concepts are great, right? We just showed the phone, like that's a conceptual word, right? They help us describe something, they help us communicate or guide people to places or whatever it is, right? But we have to also understand that a concept doesn't actually define the truth of what something is. If you go to a tree, let's say you go to a pine tree, right? That's a conceptual term that we use, and really look at it, there's tree does not really tell you what it is. It's like pumping in CO2 and pumping out oxygen. There's ants living in the bark. There's all these different layers. Like it's sucking water out of the ground, like or whatever, right? A human, like, great, it's a conceptual word, but like the chemistry experiment, like tell me what that is. Like all the way
Yeah.
down to like the atoms, like and shit. Like you know what I
It's
mean? The
so
cell and all this. Like
fascinating,
how
man.
does
Like when you look at it deeply like that,
it's
it's so
incredibly
fascinating. Yeah, it's
yeah,
unbelievable.
it's incredible.
It's
It's
like something
incredible.
you
So
would
it's like,
read in a
okay,
science
cool.
fiction novel, like if you really think about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally. And so if when you look at it in those terms, you're like, okay, cool. Like our realities are built on concepts, but we understand that concepts aren't necessarily truth, right? They're not necessarily fundamental. So if I can create concepts, that means I can create endless realities. Awesome. So let's just understand that we can create endless realities because we create concepts. Well, part of the problem that I was having was I was living in all these different realities and trying to live in them separately with like the same sort of value system that was taught to me when I became a firefighter, which was duty, respect, and integrity. But duty, respect, and integrity didn't really work very well when I was playing Legos on the floor with my children. You know
Mm,
what I mean? And duty,
yeah.
respect, integrity didn't work very good when I was trying to just have a good time on my mountain bike smashing down a hill somewhere. So it's like, and it's not to say they aren't values, but they weren't in the right order. And I couldn't, and I was compartmentalizing all these different realities and trying to be a son and then trying to be a firefighter and then a firefighter and trying not to be a dad. But it's like, dude, that's bullshit. When I'm a firefighter, I'm still a son, I'm still a father. When I'm a father and I'm a son, I'm still a firefighter. I'm all of these things. So I started asking myself the question, like, okay, well, if I am all of these things, like how do I live amongst all of them at once? How could I do that? And so for me, I developed a set of values, a system of values that worked amongst all of them all the time. So I never had to change my value system. And my value system now is value life above all else because it's not your life and it's not my life. It's our life. Everything in it, the trees, the plants, nature, all that shit. It's all a part of life. And it's our responsibility and my responsibility to value that above just me. And then
Yeah.
my second value is to be love. Like it's the one thing we all want. It's the one thing we're all looking for is love, man. Like we're all want more of it. At the end of the day, it's really the only thing we all want is just to be loved.
Yeah, full
So what
heart.
if I be that? Yeah, be
Yeah.
that thing, man. If I can be that thing and bring love into any situation, dude, then people fucking have a much more easier ability to like communicate to me and feel accepted and like and be vulnerable also so that they can express their stories and authenticity. And that's my thing. And then the next value I have, the third value is to have a willingness to learn. Like don't let my old programming become the only thing that I adhere to. Like
Yeah.
constantly go back and like, does this serve me? Does this work? Does this make any sense? Like be open to perspective. because someone's perspective might just completely blow out what I thought I knew
Yeah.
and make me a better person. So have a willingness to learn. And then my last one is live a life of servitude, which is creating a space for people to discover who they are, basically. Like, I want people to find out who they are so that they can live the best quality life. It's not about me. It's about serving this life. It's about serving others in the pursuit of their authenticity. And I can do that as a firefighter. I can do that as a husband. I can do that as a father. I can do that as a son. I can do that as I'm smashing my mountain bike. Like, I can do all those things with that value set. I can live amongst all of my realities at once. And now I'm not compartmentalizing anything. And I can continue to create.
That's incredible, Ben. I'm proud of you. I really am, man. Like, I know we
Thanks,
just
bro.
met tonight and it's virtual, but like, I think you got it figured out, man. I think you got a lot of shit figured out, and I'm sure that there's still a lot to learn, but like, you're on the right
Always.
path, dude. I'm agreeing with everything that you're saying right now. Like, it makes sense. It makes perfect sense.
For
Let's
sure.
talk about
I appreciate
because
that.
we're coming up on 2 hours, and I want to be respectful of your time, and I don't. There's no rush either.
Cool.
Um, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
definitely want to dive
It's
into
all
what
good.
you're doing now. Like, tell me about the coaching and some of the journeys that you guys have been doing, and um,
Yeah.
you know, what's happening there and how you're helping some other people.
Yeah. Well, I've been very honest about my participation and use in a legal context with psychedelics. I've had a lot of great experiences with specific compounds of psilocybin and ayahuasca, and everything I just discussed right now, has been, psychedelics have helped me achieve some of those insights. Um, I would say, the way I look at them is it's a key to a door to possibilities, and you still have to walk through that door and learn something from the experience. But I've had a lot of really good success from it, and we and my some other people have really started to invest a lot more time into developing ways for first responders to participate in some of those activities so that they can heal themselves, or at least excavate some of the trauma out and identify some of those stories. And so we've been doing that. We're kind of in a bunch of iterations at the moment, but we're myself and a couple other people are partnering with a specific organization called Heal the Heroes, and you can see them in the show notes, healtheheroes.org, I believe it is,
Yeah, make sure you send me all
and
these
it's
links
it's
too when
open
we're
to every.
done.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, don't let me
And they,
forget.
they do a lot of really great. For sure. I think I sent them an email already, but I'll send them again.
Perfect.
But yeah, but they do really great work, and we're going to be holding retreats down in Mexico, um, so that we can do it legally and safely. There's the process of doing it. There's an onboarding process and an integration process, and you're working with really legit people in a safe way. So everything's done very safely and very professionally, and we do it legally as well, so that people understand that. And so we do that, and I work with Born of Ashes. Ashley Taylor's her name. She's a great person doing some really alternative healing around emotional mental release, I think it's called. It's like a different type of therapy. So really great work there with first responders, and same with Thomas Warham, who's Mountain Mind Tricks. He also does some great stuff. He's also been on the Anchor Point podcast a few times, I believe. So I've been working with these three organizations quite a lot, trying to provide firefighters who are in positions like myself, man, where therapy and medication and all that shit wasn't working. And maybe there's other options out there for people, and trying to get people to understand. And it's unfolding into many different things, but at the end of the day, it's getting people to find that courage within themselves so that they can make the right positive steps towards healing from whatever trauma that they have, and becoming an authentic person, and live a nice, successful, creative, and abundant life. And also, like, educating people and trying to get people closer to the land and developing that relationship with the land again.
Hmm. I think
I
nature's
think is
super
also something
healing,
that's
man.
super,
Like
oh my
I
God.
can't.
And
It's
it's
it
just
is
so,
for
we've just like,
me personally.
oh yeah. And we've weaseled it out of our lives in many ways, like
Hmm.
there's, and for a lot of people, maybe that's their medicine. Maybe the medicine is just being outside more. So I think like some of that stuff, and then also like taking part in giving back to some indigenous cultures, stuff in America, some places in Mexico, and really trying to pay it back to these people that are kind of upholding a lot of these traditions that our society's forgetting about. And so that's kind of what I'm doing in the background with the mental health stuff. Um,
Now, is
yeah,
this open to anybody, or is it only first responders, or are you guys taking on
anybody.
veterans? Any
Anybody,
really?
anybody. I think we started with first responders in the beginning, mainly wildland firefighters, and then we had some trickle-in people who were general population, and then some
Mhm.
other public servants, and we realized it's just a common thread, man. Like everybody's suffering. Like it's not just first responders. Like first responders might be filling the peripheral glass up faster because of the amount of things they're exposed to, but
Hmm.
this is people shit, and it's open to people, anybody. It's Heal the Heroes is not just about heroes, it's about individuals, normal individuals being the heroes of their life. So that's what we're doing, man.
This is a pretty crazy healing process to put yourself in an altered state. What advice do you
Mhm.
have for people that potentially want to go down this path, um, but are on the fence? Like, what's what's the safest way to do this from your experience? Um, because I think,
Yeah.
it's not to go down to the 7-Eleven and meet the guy behind the dumpster and get some ayahuasca and then, or what you think is
Totally no.
ayahuasca or something, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I think we got to be careful here, especially if there's young people listening to this,
Yes, thank you.
and how do you, I guess, how do you start the process? What is there a vetting process or anything? Is there any sort of like counseling that goes on
Yeah.
before any of this happens? Like,
Yeah.
can we dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, please. Thank you so much for asking that question,
Yeah.
because that's the last thing we need is for people to think like, and I mean, a lot of times, like we say these things, we say psychedelics, and the context around that is like this taboo thing that we remember when we were like in our high school
It's
years
been
and college
taboo for
years,
a year. I
and
mean,
it's like,
yeah, our government still looks at it that
yeah,
way, you know?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and I truly, and this word gets overused sometimes. I truly believe these are sacred things, and they're very powerful medicines that have been used by ancient peoples for thousands and thousands of years. So they are very powerful. They put people in a very vulnerable state, and so it's really important that if you are looking to do something like this, if this is something that's calling to you, that you find the right people, because there are plenty of stories out there of being in a psychedelic, a very vulnerable state, and there's charlatans out there
Mm.
that will take advantage of you, and those that we have to talk about those. Those have to be known. So the vetting process is extremely important, right? Specifically around ayahuasca, you can't be on SSRIs, which is serotonin
Yeah.
something something up in like antidepressants, basically. So we don't we you need to make sure that we're understanding where your medication is, and we have people that do these onboarding calls that we go through medical history, we go through all of the things to make sure that you're a right fit and you're prepared. And also, like, it also comes down to where you are at as a person. If you've done no self work at all with the therapist, or you've done no excavating or opening up, you don't have a practice to come back to after ceremonies, or whatever it is, like those people we might need to take a slower approach, where you work with like Thomas, Mountain Matrix or Born of Ashes for a little bit, doing like one-on-one therapy sessions to sort of like develop a practice to release as much trauma as possible before we just put you in this incredibly powerful experience that you don't have the tools yet to actually process and deal
So
with.
there's actually some
So
science behind it too, man. And I tout Andrew Huberman a ton. I've learned a ton from little life hacks, that have really helped me, man. It's just like it's simple stuff, and understanding how the human mind works, and what chemicals that are naturally in your body can do to you, or alter your own state, just even from a feeling perspective, just feeling good or feeling happy or feeling,
Yeah.
So I urge anybody to go down that path first, science for sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
Educate yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's important. Like it's very, very important to educate yourself. There's plenty of resources out there to learn
And it's
great
fun
stuff.
learning,
Andrew
man.
Huberman's a great person.
You know?
Oh, totally.
Yeah. It's fun
For sure.
experimenting. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so that's what we're doing, man. And like, I feel almost calls daily, people reaching out to me like, hey, like I'm dealing with this or this is happening to me. Like, dude, I can be that person too. Like if you just want to talk,
mhm.
like let's just talk. Like that's a sign of courage, man. Like putting down the thought for a minute and just reaching out to somebody who's willing to listen. Like I've been there, man. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to just share perspective if you want to. And so like I'm fucking super willing to do that shit for people.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, and it doesn't have to be psychedelics. It doesn't have to be anything. Like I do weekly runs, like come run with me. Let's go on a run. Let's just enjoy nature together or whatever, like there's plenty of ways to find the medicine, and I don't want people to think like psychedelics are the end all be all, because it's from my perspective that we are the medicine. When we can finally figure out what is and excavate and understand ourselves and get to a place, like the goal is to understand like you're the medicine, dude. You're the medicine. You have it all. You have everything you need to be successful. And
Yeah.
we just want you to see that.
Yeah, that's super important. That's a great outlook too. Uh, if anybody's listening to this right now and they want to get a hold of you specifically to maybe start one of these journeys or something like that, what's the best way to contact you or one of these
Yeah.
organizations that will actually help them?
Yeah. If you go to healtheheroes.org, that's like the kind of more retreat stuff that's taking place. There's one going to be happening in June and another one. I can't remember, but they have some stuff going on. They're beautiful too, and they may not do medicine with you. Maybe they do some one-on-one therapy type stuff. And then you have bornofashes.org, and you have mountainmindtricks.com. Also 7waystomedicine.com. Those are like the four that I'd recommend reaching out to if you're interested in some of the
Cool.
stuff
We're
that
going to
I've been
put
up
all
to.
these in the show notes. There's going to be a million links in here, so you're going to have to do a little bit of homework. But that's awesome, man. It's all good
If you want to
stuff.
reach me, yeah, and if you want to reach me, it's at Ben Strahan at Instagram is the best way to do it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Awesome. So
Yeah.
let's see here. There was something else. I'm drawing a blank right now, man, because I'm thinking about my own self right now. That's selfish.
Yeah, good.
This episode's about you, bro.
No,
Uh,
no.
so, gosh darn it. Why am I drawing a blank right now? Oh, the other thing I definitely wanted to ask you before we jump off, if
Sure.
anybody's looking for a career in wildland firefighting, what's the best advice you can give to somebody, some young buck that wants to come up and young man, woman, whatever, that wants to get into that sort of career path?
Yeah, man, it's super funny. I get asked this question like literally all the time, and I never have the same answer, or maybe even the best answer. But really, really, what I look for in a person is someone who's actively working on themselves. Like I said, I'm trying to develop good people, and that doesn't mean you didn't bump your head on the road a few times. You know what I mean, of your life. Like we hire inmates, ex-inmates all the time. We hire females. We hire all kinds of people. Be a good person. Take your fucking physical fitness super serious, because it's the more fit you are, the easier the job is, and the safer we can do it. So I take physical fitness extremely serious, and show that you want to be here. Like it's that level of character is missing right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a real, and I don't want to sound like an asshole, but I'm seeing less and less people that want to be here and more people that feel like they deserve it,
Mm.
like the entitlement type stuff. So if you want to be a hotshot or if you want to work for the Forest Service or be a firefighter, want it. Like want to be there. Like do what it takes to be there, man. Put the work in. Come say hi. Give us a
Mm-hmm.
call, like or whatever it is. But show that you want it. So work on yourself, develop strong physical fitness, and want it.
All great advice.
Mm-hmm.
Last thing I want to talk about, we live in a mountain community. We have a lot of people that listen to the show that are kind of learning through us how to be good stewards of the land, how to, I ask a lot of questions that I kind of already know the answer to a lot of the times. And I'm not saying that I know
Mm-hmm.
everything, but I grew up in the mountains, 12 generations deep of really good stewards and really good mentors in the outdoor space, whether it's hunting or fishing or having a campfire, the proper way. What can we do to help mitigate some fires so it's not as crazy?
Shoo, that's a big
That's a
question.
tough question, I
You know,
know, but like I think,
a simple a simple one could be like if you're living in the woods, take care of the space that you're in. You know what I mean? Like
mhm,
if you're a homeowner and you're living in a rural area in the woods, like take your clearance like seriously and do what you can. You know, if you're going camping and you live in the city and you're going into the rural area, understand when you have a fire in a remote place that if that escapes and causes a fire, the amount of destruction that it can cause is serious.
mhm.
So just be responsible while you're there.
Pay attention to
There's a
fire bans, man. Like we have so many people that,
totally.
like especially in September is like the height of our fire season in Colorado and pretty much around the country. And it's also
Yeah,
the start of the hunting seasons. And I don't know how many times
yeah,
I've been out where there's people dispersed camping, there's people pulling into camp. Some of them are out of state, and there's a full on fire ban, but they're not paying any attention to it. They're having a
yeah.
campfire.
Yeah, and that we talked about like educating yourself. Like that's to be a good steward of the land is like if you're going to be in the woods, educate yourself on where you're going, what you're doing, fire danger, just like and don't just be a person that is taking from the wood pile and not putting wood back. Like be
Yeah,
someone in there who's putting wood back, man. Being a steward of the land is giving back to the land. It's not just taking from it. So
100%.
those would be my big things, you know.
Ben, this has been super awesome. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up, man. But I want to continue this
Excellent.
with, dude, I can't wait to get you out to Colorado. I'll come to you.
For
Please
sure.
be safe during this fire season and stay in touch with me, man. If you need help with anything on the podcast side. Oh, that was the one question I wanted to ask you. You're starting a podcast. Can we talk about that for a
Yeah,
minute? Is it up
totally.
and running?
Yeah.
What's the premise? Like, what's going on there, man?
I'll be super honest. Well, yeah, I mean, I literally just deboxed the equipment today, so it's not up and running yet.
Yeah, we were trying to
And
get
then
it running, but
yeah, and then fire season is about to crack off. You know, like a crew comes on at the end of May,
hmm.
so limited time to get episodes out there and stuff. So it'll be clunky in the beginning. There'll be some downtime. You know, it was 100% crowdsourced. So I mean, the people donated money so I could do it because people have been
Oh,
telling
that's
me to do this.
awesome,
So
man.
super appreciative. The premise of it, man, like honestly, is that probably just storytelling, just like what we're doing, man. I
Hmm.
just want to find interesting people out there doing badass shit that nobody fucking knows about and get their word out because there's incredible people doing incredible things that nobody knows about. They're just silently doing what's awesome in this world, and I want these people to have space to share their stories.
That's exactly what we're doing here. That's exactly what this has turned into, and I am so fortunate, just from what I've learned from it.
Yeah,
So I think you're gonna crush it,
totally.
dude. I enjoyed listening to
Yeah,
you tonight and talking with you tonight, and I'm
thank you.
happy for you, bro.
Me too.
Anything that we can do to support you here, it's an open door, man. I think that more than anything as podcasters and up and coming podcasters, we're kind of a community too, man. Like, don't be afraid to help somebody else out. I'm an open book. Sure. You're always open to anything that I got going on or what's helped me. And I am no professional by any means, but I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. So yeah, I'd be glad to at least share those, what not to do. But thanks, Ben, man, I really value your time, your family's time, dude, and keep crushing it. And let's stay in touch, man. Let me know whenever, podcast or not, dude. You got an open line to me, so thank you. Real quick, one last thing before we jump off. Instagram, any websites you want to plug again, definitely open the show notes if you're listening to this. Check out some of these amazing foundations, retreats that are available, self-help, all that sort of stuff. Anything you want to drop, there's no rush.
For sure. For me, it's if you want to just see what I'm doing, social media wise, Instagram, at Ben Strahan is the best way to see what I'm up to, constantly fucking around doing things and speaking philosophically, if you like that shit too. If you want consulting work from a self-leadership perspective, Moment Consulting LLC is my consulting company. I do a lot of public speaking in that space, telling my story honestly. And then also if you're into the mental health game, the practitioners that I'm working with, healtheheroes.org, 7 Ways to Medicine, Mountain Mind Tricks, and Born of Ashes. Like those 4 or 5, however many I mentioned, are the people really crushing it right now, helping a lot of people out. So, and that's that. Oh, and then if you want to support fire, and you want to support like the movement for pay and classification and all the stuff we talked about earlier in the podcast, the grassroots Wildland Firefighters those are the people, man. They're doing really amazing work. So
shout out to the Anchor Point too, man. Check that podcast out if you haven't already, and especially if you're wanting to get into wildland firefighting or you want to know anything about it. And just an incredible human, even if you're not into any of that shit. Just go listen to Brandon, man. Absolutely. He's awesome, dude. I love that guy. So 100%. Thank you. Really appreciate it. And we'll catch up, dude, soon. You're welcome on here anytime. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for listening to the Mountainside Podcast. If you haven't had a chance to do this already, please take a moment, follow, like, subscribe, or rate on whatever platform you catch the Mountainside Podcast at. Also, if you'd like some more information on upcoming episodes, safety tips, access to all of our affiliates, and all the badass discounts that we get here at the Mountainside Podcast, check out themountainsidepodcast.com.